Hey you guys, it's Cayley. I am back with another what sold from last week video. In today's video, I will be going over all of my sales that are happening on eBay and Poshmark. As usual, sales have been very roller coastery up and down, but I do feel like I'm headed in the upward trajectory of Q4. I feel like it's starting to actually kick in. I have had some kind of off and on sales with Poshmark ever since they kind of waffled and went back and forth with their fees. The first time they made the Poshmark fee change, I actually experienced better sales. And then when they switched back to the 20%, my sales actually took a little bit of a dip. So I know we've all had different experiences, probably about 50-50. Let me know what your experience was with both of those changes down below. I try to stay in the mindset that you always need to push forward. It is a little bit discouraging sometimes, and it did frustrate me that they went back and forth so quickly without allowing enough time to have data to go off of and see if things settled out, because I was on the camp that I actually preferred the new fees because I was making a lot more money. But even so, I always try to stay in the mindset of just pressing forward and using what is current. And so I'm going to keep pushing forward with back to the 20% fees and trying to get those sales back up. This is why I think it's really important, especially nowadays, that if you are capable of adding another platform, capable of cross listing, I don't recommend adding a new platform if you're not ready for that. I always say try to make sure you master the one you're on before adding a new one, because it's basically like having a second job. But if you are capable of it, now is a really good time to start cross-posting, because you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket. And I really felt that over the last couple of weeks, because whenever one platform makes a ton of changes, my other platform, picks up the sales. And the same is true for eBay. Sometimes eBay makes a bunch of changes and then Poshmark picks up the sales for me. So it goes back and forth, but I really am an advocate of cross-posting. If, again, you can handle adding another platform onto your sales, just to not have all of your eggs in one basket for this reason. I use List Perfectly to cross-post. If you are interested in the link to that, checking it out, plus there is a coupon code for your first month off, then click the Linktree in the description. That is where all of my links and coupon codes are if you want to check it out. All right, so all of the sales that we're going to be going over happen between October 13th through the 19th. In total, I sold 297 items for gross item sales total, meaning less what I received in shipping. Just for the items themselves, gross total was $9,368.37. So it did bump up a little bit, which I'm happy about. My average item sale price was around $31.50. On eBay, I sold 183 items. On Poshmark, I sold 114. Average sale price on eBay is outstanding as usual, and you can see I made the bulk of my sales through eBay. My average item sale price on eBay was $37. On Poshmark, I sold way less, just as usual, clearing out some older inventory on that platform, but I do have some full price sales to show you today. I sold 114 items for an average item sale price of close to $22. Let's dive into some of these individual sales. This first one is by a brand I definitely think you should be on the lookout for. It is Peruvian Connection. Now, this one actually was missing its brand label. You can see no brand label here. But sometimes when you have an inclination that it's still a great item, what you can do is check on the inner tag inside. This one actually happened to say Peruvian Connection. However, sometimes it doesn't say that. And what you can do is look up the RN number on the tag and just kind of say that in your listing, but list it as the brand itself. You just want to verify it is the correct brand. So luckily this one actually said Peruvian Connection on the item. Peruvian Connection is an excellent brand to be on the lookout for, especially in winter, coupled with great materials. So this one is a wool silk blend. They also have some alpaca and cashmere pieces. I would say they're more known for their alpaca pieces. That's why there's a llama as their logo. And this one was a wool silk blend pullover. It was estimated to be a larger size. Listed this for $75. It did sell for our full asking price. This one did take several months to sell, longer than I would have liked. However, we listed this back in April. So in the warmer season, it makes sense to me why this took so long to sell. Next up, you guys might recognize this. This is a recent pickup from the bins. I showed it in a haul video. Not sure if you guys have seen that haul yet, but this is the brand Cinzia, and it is a vintage item. Actually, I do know that haul happened because you guys commented and told me a little bit about this brand, said it was more of like a dance dress, like a known for dancers, which makes sense because this gave me very ballet vibes. It was so gorgeous. It had all these beautiful dainty details. I've never seen a dress like this where it kind of is like an applique floral, but the same color. It had so many gorgeous details. This fell into a ton of different categories. I could see this going so many ways, but the keywords we chose to put in the title were dainty, ballet, midi, of course, because it's longer, dance, because of what you guys told me about the history of the brand, and then minimalist. Some other things we could have put onto this would be like fairy, angel, things like that, just because of the aesthetic of this dress. So anything similar to this, I'm definitely going to keep my eye out for, but this brand in particular, Cinzia, seems to have some great pieces. I listed this one for $75. It sold very quickly on an offer to Watcher for around $64. This actually sold the exact same day that we got it listed. Next up, this is Elaine Fisher. This is one of my favorite brands to sell. I like to tell you about the exceptions I make in certain brands because, as you guys know, I promote picking up only plus sizes in Elaine Fisher for the most part. However, I will make some exceptions when there are different factors involved. Mainly their outerwear and more substantial pieces in Elaine Fisher. This one is a really nice green down-filled puffer vest. The material down is absolutely something you want to look for in just about anything. It is going to significantly increase the value. So will having a hood on an item, so make sure you consider that when you are comping. Greens right now, different shades of greens are very trendy, and this is a very trendy shade of green. So anytime you're out there and you see something that is an interesting shade of green, maybe consider adding green in your comp search and just see if that makes a difference. So we listed this one for $60. It sold on an offer to Watcher for $51. This one took a couple of months to sell. Next up, this is one of my favorite aesthetics to pick up and to sell. I have a very core customer niche. I have multiple core customers, but this is probably my highest one, my top one, which is the artsy, log and look, more mature lady that buys expensive brands. So this one is a very high-end expensive brand in this category. It is called Niche by Nilgan Derman. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Really great comps on this. Average sale price in general is really good. This one was a button-up jacket. Anytime I see a log and look oversized jacket, especially ones with interesting buttons, I am looking up that brand. So the silhouette, the texture of the jacket, the buttons, all great factor stacking, which is why we decided to look this up. Listed this one for $50. It did sell for our full asking price. I've actually sold pants in this brand for close to $100. Super wide leg pants this brand makes. So it really just depends on what you have, but as a whole, this artsy brand is pretty good to look for. Next up, I would say that this is also a category I would be on the lookout for, which are trench coats or longer length coats. I see a lot of people looking for those capsule wardrobe pieces, meaning neutral, staple, but high quality pieces. This one definitely falls into that. This is a newer brand to me called Nicole Farhi, I think is how you pronounce it. And we talk about key indicators, potential indicators of quality all the time. We've mentioned before, but I'll just point it out again, that whenever you see the same color lettering with the same color background on a tag, I would look that brand up. I've just noticed that as a common factor. So this is that brand's trench coat. It was a silk blend made in Italy, also an indicator. Maybe you want to look it up. And as you can see, very neutral capsule wardrobe kind of a style. We listed this one for $45. It sold for our full asking price, and it only took 6 days to sell. Next up, this is something else I'm looking for, which are pretty standout novelty sweaters, whether it's vintage or whether it is modern. I found this one by Maggie Lawrence, which brand doesn't really matter to me because it was all about the style. You can just tell that this kind of has an it factor. It really stands out, and novelty sweaters everybody is looking for right now. I don't pick up every novelty sweater. I really try to find pieces that look very unique. And a key indicator to me that it might be worth getting also is if the embroidery, the pattern, whatever's on the item also comes to the back. If they took time to put it around the back, probably an indicator to look into. You can see it kind of comes along the back of the sleeves here with that chain print. These ones also had heavy embroidered, I would call it celestial. They look like suns to me, and chain print. And it's the classic navy blue with the gold buttons. That is a very trendy color combo that people have been looking for years, but I think it's especially true right now because people are into that like old money preppy look, and navy blues paired with golds definitely are something people are looking for. So keep that in mind as you see pieces in this color combo. I listed this one for $45. It sold for our full asking price, and this one took about a month to sell, so not very long for a style-based pickup. Next up, we have the brand Merrell. This is an outdoorsy brand. They are most well known for their hiking shoes. And I would say Merrell in general, it used to be that you could pick up anything in that brand. I would say it really depends on the style, the size, the gender, all that now, and the condition. But in general, the men's pieces and the footwear still perform pretty good. I picked these ones up. They were called the Chameleon. One good thing about footwear in general is you can usually Google lens it and find the exact style that you need to be able to do a quick comp. And I could just tell that these were pretty high quality based on the construction of the shoe and the fact that they were men's. They also had Vibram tread, and that was another key indicator to maybe look that up. Lots of high quality shoes have the Vibram soles. It's kind of something people look for. So these did have slight wear and marks, but in general, the construction of them and the tread of them was in really great condition. Listed these for $45. They sold on an offer to Watcher for $35. They actually sold the next day after getting them listed. A lot of people ask me, how do you make so many quick sales? We've talked about why full price sales before. I made a video on that. However, how do you sell things so quickly? It's honestly the same answer that I gave for full price stuff. It's just pricing effectively, making sure you do the listing, the photos, like everything that you need in the listing is top notch, fully explained, and you price effectively from the get-go so that you don't have to go back later. Obviously, you've seen in my videos, sometimes I do have those times where I priced something too high, got a little bit too stingy on something, or maybe researched it wrong, and I priced something too high. And those are the items that have sat for, several months, 6 months, sometimes even a year. But it usually comes down to price, which is why I price drop throughout the month. So this is why something, even though like this has, some wear on it, I considered all of that when pricing it, and that's why I think things sell so quickly. So just wanted to answer that question because we did have a lot of quick sales in this video. Next up, hats. This is a brand I just learned about when doing a hats deep dive on Reseller's Edge. It is the brand Reselling. I don't know who picked this up, but we picked this up about a year ago, and it just turns out that I actually researched it recently, and I was like, oh, we actually already have one of these in inventory. It looks like it came from a thrift store, but Reselling in general is a decent hat brand to look for. It came up a lot when I was doing a deep dive on hats. This one had some wear, so that might be why it took so long to sell, but in general, men's Reselling hats are good to look up. This one is called the Self-Conforming Western Rodeo Beaver Hat, and we listed it probably originally, again, way too high. This is why this has sat for that long, plus probably the wear, and we didn't consider that when pricing it. So I'm gonna guess we probably had this listed around $75 maybe, and we have since dropped the price every single month, and it ended up selling on an offer for $40. We only paid $2.99 for it. It is small, so it didn't take up that much space. I think in the future we're going to be more careful with how we are pricing these hats, but again, definitely one I saw come up a lot in my hats deep dive research. So one, if you come across it, I would keep your eye out for and definitely do a comp. Next up, this is a Patagonia kids jacket. Something I like to do, particularly in fall and winter, is I don't normally go to the kids section. Like, I'll glance down the aisle just to make sure nothing stands out or if somebody hasn't stashed something. But in general, it's not a section that I spend a lot of time in. However, in fall and winter, I'll quickly run through the aisles just to see if there's any puffer jackets. There's really only a few brands I look for: Patagonia, North Face, Aviator Nation, sometimes Eddie Bauer if it's a really substantial jacket, but generally speaking, the outdoorsy brands that perform well in adult jackets are the same brands that I would look for in the kids, and Patagonia is definitely, in my opinion, the one that goes for the highest in kids. So even with a little bit of wear, I consider getting Patagonia in the kids department. Super easy to just run through the aisle and pick out any of these. I come across them pretty often. So this one is a down jacket and we listed it for $45. Like I said, it did have quite a bit of wear and it ended up selling for our full asking price. Looks like this one took almost exactly 2 months to sell, which is a great turnaround time for a kids item. Next up, this is a vintage single stitch t-shirt. This isn't a brand I would memorize. Brand in this case doesn't really matter, but it was a really cool graphic. And I mentioned before about the sweaters, looking for the design to come all the way around the back. The same thing is true with vintage t-shirts or t-shirts in general. If you see a front and a back graphic, it should cause you to at least say, maybe I need to look into this at the very least. So this was a dinosaur single stitch shirt, very cool piece. We listed this for $45 and it sold on an offer to watcher for $38. This one took a couple of months to sell. All right, so we actually picked this up at the bins in Nashville. We went there for like an hour and didn't find much, but Nikki did find 2 in a new rotation of these Patagonia men's boxer shorts. We decided to lot these up just to quick sell them, and surprisingly they sold pretty quickly for being a pair, like a set of boxer shorts, and they do have a pretty good sell-through rate. So listed these together because they were the same size for $40 and they did sell for our full asking price. These also took a couple of months to sell. Next up, fall and winter is a great time. It's my favorite time of the year to source because there are a lot of brands that you wouldn't normally pick up that have more substantial pieces that can perform well. So it's a great time to basically factor stack, look for more substantial pieces, and have the opportunity to pick up brands that you wouldn't normally pick up. Calvin Klein is definitely one of those for me in fall and winter. They make a lot of businessy, dressier type looking jackets. We talked about like the capsule wardrobe, like a trench coat from Calvin Klein would be something that I would look into. This is a woman's long length plaid tweed dressier style, career style coat in a larger size 16. So lots of factor stacking there. We listed this one for $40 and it sold for our full asking price. This one took, looks like about 3 weeks to sell, which is a great turnaround time for Calvin Klein. So again, in a lot of brands, a lot of mall brands that you probably pass on, they do have some more substantial pieces in fall and winter that you might want to be comping. I mentioned this brand a few times. This is one of my favorite men's brands to pick up recently. Very heavy following for Buck Mason. They sold a lot of pretty like staple plain pieces. However, they go for a lot. If you didn't know about this brand, you would probably pass on it because look, this is just a plain long sleeve men's t-shirt. Listed this one for $40 and it did sell for our full asking price. And looks like this one actually took a few months to sell, so maybe we priced it slightly high, but am happy with the full price turnaround. Just like Eileen Fisher, I don't normally get Lauren Ralph Lauren tops and anything that is not plus size. However, I do make certain exceptions. This would be one of those exceptions. This is a Lauren Ralph Lauren women's size large button-up shirt. The reason I made this exception is because it is very equestrian. It has a lot of great prints to it. A unique piece by Lauren Ralph Lauren, usually in any size, is going to perform well, but particularly their core aesthetics like Western, equestrian, Southwestern, if it really embodies those vibes, I would definitely be looking those up. I get pretty much anything in Lauren Ralph Lauren and all of their lines that are in those aesthetics. So this is a kind of like a bit and bridle horseshoe equestrian print top. Listed this high because it was in that aesthetic for $40. It sold for our full asking price, and it looks like it took about a month and a half to sell. Next up, this one was kind of an experiment for me. This is wearing Coldwater Creek. I knew that velvet was very trendy due to coming into fall and being close to Halloween with the whimsy goth, witchy, vamp goth aesthetic. There's so many keywords that you could use in this. But when I actually looked up Coldwater Creek black velvet jackets, even in this size, there were not great comps. And I just had a gut feeling about it. So I listed it, put all the crazy keywords in there to ensure that it would sell, and surprisingly it did sell very quickly. And I have since picked this up, as an experiment, and I've come across tons of Coldwater Creek black velvet jackets like this that I passed on because I wanted to wait and see if my risk and experiment was going to pay off before I loaded up on them. But that is a tip I have for you guys. If you are going to risk it on something, if you're experimenting with something, don't go crazy picking things up until you're sure that that risk is going to pay off. In this case, it did for me, and now I'll be looking for items like this in the future, even if I'm going against comps. So this one I paid $6.99 for. I listed it for $35. It sold on an offer to watcher for $30, and it only took 10 days to sell. And I just, again, have to attribute that to all of the great keywords that we've been teaching and learning in Reseller's Edge, because without those keywords, I do not think that this would sell. When I did comps, there were tons of these out there and very few sold. So it's all about how you market the item. Next up, along those same lines, this is a Calvin Klein velvet top. Again, velvet velour being extremely trendy. I also really like picking up Calvin Klein plus size tops when they've got, I won't just pick up like a plain t-shirt or something like that, but they're more officey or dressier type tops with certain factors. Comboed can perform well. In this case, this was new at tags. It was velour. It had a very nice like jewel tone to it. It was actually emerald green. Hard to tell in this photo, but it's an emerald green. You can see some of the keywords we used here. We listed this for $35, and it did sell for our full asking price. This one took a couple of months to sell. Next up, I have to mention J. Crew blazers because it's just like been such a consistent seller for me for the last few years. So this is another thing that sometimes I'll go against the comps on, because even though comps don't look great sometimes, they just always sell for me. They usually sell for around $40 to $50 pre-owned for me. However, this one did have some small runs through it, so we listed it lower at $35. This was a navy blue J. Crew women's blazer in a size 10, listed it for $35 because of the flaws. It did sell for our full asking price, and it only took a month and a half to sell. This was a recent pickup. I've been heavily looking for Y2K dresses with very specific aesthetics, very specific comboed factor stacking. This one did not actually have all of the factors that I'm looking for in a dress, but again, I just had that gut feeling about it. Sheer stuff right now is extremely trendy, and this one had quite a few sheer panels. So it had the sheer panel here. You can kind of see part of the side of the leg was sheer. The back was sheer, but it did cover up other parts of the body. And I just thought that this was just very on trend, very unique. Again, it had that kind of it factor. So I took a risk on it, and you can see some of the keywords that we chose to use. Y2K was definitely the best one. Angel core, romantic, sheer, actually, again, because sheer is so popular with Y2K stuff. If you have something sheer, might be worth actually putting in your title. So this is the brand Kitty. If I come across this brand again, I am going to keep my eye out for it because it is a Y2K brand that puts out some pretty cool pieces. So I paid $6.99 for this. I listed it for $40. Looking back, I priced it kind of low because I wasn't too sure where things would pan out and I wanted to err on the side of caution. Looking back now, if I come across something like this again, I am going to price higher. I listed this for $40. It sold for my full asking price, and it only took 3 days to sell. 3 days. Crazy. All right, here's another Eileen Fisher piece. This is again an exception where it is not a plus size piece. This is just a size extra large, which is a pretty good size, but it's that oversized login look, kind of gauzy texture to it. It also had organic cotton. Listed this for $35. It did sell for our full asking price, even with a small flaw, and it took about 2 months to sell. Haven't mentioned Lululemon shorts in a while, but we are still selling Lululemon shorts. Lululemon shorts, some other jackets and outerwear, but shorts are one of the few categories just in general in Lululemon that still have a really high sell-through rate and sell for good money. This one was missing its drawstring. We listed it for $34. It did sell for our full asking price, and it took about a month and a half to sell. So if you're someone who's given up on Lululemon, if you can find them in the shorts in pretty much any size, any style, they are going to flip well for you for about $30 to $40. This was another Y2K style-based piece. Like I've mentioned before, I've been picking up literally hundreds of these. I come across them at least once, usually sometimes way more than that per day. They're pretty common to come across, Y2K tops. Again, I'm looking for very specific factor stacking. This one was actually missing one of the key factors that I look for, but I took a risk on it because I've been selling a lot of these Y2K lace trim camis quite often. This is the brand Energy. This one is a Y2K brand that, generally speaking, has some pretty good Y2K vintage pieces. So in general, if I see this brand, I am looking into it. It does seem to have a pretty good following. This one also had some dainty details to it that I think also helped to increase the value. Y2K was the most important keyword to be in the title. I listed this for $35 pre-owned. I can proudly say $35 for tank tops. If you would have asked me a couple years ago if I would be heavily looking in the tank top section, I would have told you absolutely not. And then if you would have asked me if I would be selling them for $30 to $40 on average, I'd say absolutely not. So it's just crazy to me how much some of these are going for and how frequently I can come across them. So I listed this one for $35. It sold for our full asking price, and it only took 5 days to sell. This is a very popular category for fall and winter that sells really well. They are wool base layers. Pretty much any brand that does wool base layers has a very good following and sells really well, especially right now. This is a brand Icebreaker. Icebreaker is definitely one you want to look for. This was their Body Fit 150 Merino wool base layer t-shirt, men's size medium. Listed this one for $40. It sold on an offer to watcher for $34, and it took about a month and a half to sell. There are so many brands that make merino wool base layers, even some that maybe you wouldn't think of, base layers or wool base layers in general. I would definitely look them up. My sister just found one at the bins. I think it was Outdoor Research she found, and I didn't know they made wool base layers, and she found one and got it. And so it's just kind of opened my eyes up to sometimes there's brands that aren't, I guess, known for making those pieces that do, and those are ones you can look for as well. Next up, this is another brand that still is hanging on strong. It is Natural Life, especially their dresses. Their dresses are really where the high sell-through rate and high ASP is, and they're still holding pretty strong. I just checked comps the other day. This is a gauzy midi dress. I am pricing towards the mid to lower end on this, just because I know for fall and winter dresses, are going to take a plummet with sell-through rate. So I'm pricing mine lower just to ensure that it moves. Listed this one for $35. It did sell for our full asking price, and it only took 12 days to sell. All right, this is Zara. This is a brand I hardly ever pick up, but when I do, it is a key piece, particularly their blogger favorites. So sometimes celebrities, bloggers, fashion blogs, things like that will use Zara key pieces in their articles, or you'll see a celebrity wearing it. And those are the pieces in Zara that go for a lot of money. So it's really someone else making the piece famous. And that's why Zara as a brand as a whole is not great to pick up in everything. So you really want to be specific when you're doing your comps, either by looking up the exact style, or in this case, I could look up like wool blend cable knit sweater, and then I might select the certain color or something, but being very specific when you're looking something up. So this is an all over cable knit, which is another potential indicator of quality. Blogger favorite women's Zara sweater. I listed this for $30. It did sell for our full asking price, and it only took 5 days to sell. Next up, this is another plus size brand that I look for, J. Jill. This is a J. Jill 2X linen blazer. When it comes to plus size brands that I like picking up consistently, I've noticed that it's really mostly their tops that do well. It's not the sweaters, it's not the jackets, it's not the pants, it's the tops. So I have a really hard time sometimes when I come across anything else other than a top in these brands, because I'm like, okay, it's a jacket, right? It should be more substantial. It should sell for more than a top, but for some reason, the market just isn't there. In this case, we decided to take a chance with this one because it was linen. Floral linen blazer in a size 2X. Again, in general, these plus size brands that do well are not going to do well in blazers. I know it doesn't make sense to me either, but it's just something that I've noticed. But this is one we've made an exception on. Listed it for $30. It sold on an offer to watcher for $25, and this one took 4 days to sell. And I guess the crazy thing to me is that I have sold J. Jill plus size tops that are way more plain than this, with not as great of a material as linen, for more than I just sold this blazer for. All right, next up, this is a factor stacking piece. This is the brand Jones New York. This is not a brand I would necessarily memorize. However, they do put out some pieces that have, I would say, all of the factors within a trending aesthetic. In this case, this is a very fairy kind of dress to me. It's very flowy. This one was full button. I could see this going career, office, but it did scream fairy to me and had a lot of factor stacking. I listed this one for $35. It sold on an offer to watcher for $30. And this one only took, let's see here, 7 days to sell. That was really quick. This was a bins pickup. I also went back and forth at the bins on whether to get this or not, because it was missing a few factors that I would like to get in a fairy piece. But I'm going to start trusting my gut a little bit more. This is the brand Cuddle Duds. I have noticed in Cuddle Duds that their plus size pieces perform extremely well for me. If you look up comps on Cuddle Duds in specific pieces, even with specific sizes, sometimes the sell-through rate is not there. This is just something I'm picking up based on experience, but it seems like every Cuddle Duds plus size piece that I get performs well, especially when it's like a cardigan, a wrap, or a little bit more of a substantial piece. This one is a Cuddle Duds women's, just hooded, again with the hooded adding some value, cozy cardigan in a size 2X. I listed this for $30, which is pretty high for Cuddle Duds. It sold for my full asking price, and it only took a couple of months to sell. I was tipped off that Cuddle Duds in plus sizes might be something to look into a little bit more, because I come across Cuddle Duds pretty often and I had been passing on a lot of it, but I was tipped off when I did a Whatnot show back when we started Whatnot shows up again many months ago, and I had a Cuddle Duds plus size piece very similar to this. It was like a hooded like cardigan kind of thing in a plus size, and I think it went for like $50 because again the sell-through rate was not there when you did the comp for it. So that's what kind of tipped me off to the fact that maybe I should be looking into plus size Cuddle Duds. And again, I do heavily focus on comps, on sell-through rate, but there is something to be said about trusting the comps in your own store as well, and this is definitely a category Cuddle Duds plus size pieces that have been performing extremely well for me for about a year now, and they have not failed me. So if you guys have something in your store that for some reason goes against the comps but sells extremely well for you, let us know in the comments down below if you want to share it. I always think that those are extremely interesting, and again, it's just kind of like a personal win for me whenever I find something that performs really well for us but goes against comps. Next up, this is a factor stacking piece. This is Jones New York again. I do not normally get Jones New York in plus sizes. However, sometimes there are a lot of factors stacked into one piece where I might want to pick up an item. This one is very log and look. This is similar to the piece I showed you at the beginning of the video. I think it was niche by Nagonderman or something like that, but it's got that oversized look. It's got interesting button details. You can see an asymmetric button right here. It's also that interesting shade of green. Again, shades of green, different shades of green, very trendy right now. This one stood out to me a lot, and so for that, all those factor stacking reasons, I wanted to get this one. It was also linen. Listed this one for $30, which is higher than I would normally price a bread and butter plus size item. But because of all those factors, we listed a little bit higher at $30. It sold on an offer to watcher for $25, and it only took 8 days to sell. So I'm getting a little bit more confident on the factor stacking with this one. Again, this goes back to, just like the Cuddle Duds, trusting what's happening in your own store and relying on your core customer. This was another bins pickup. This was a style-based piece. It had absolutely no tags at all, but it was a velvet comboed with like a satiny back, so I guess reversible, black and red, which is a very trendy, powerful color combo right now, black and red, especially with velvet. It was a, like, I guess I would call it a wrap scarf. So we put all kinds of keywords in this, but I thought for sure with Halloween and the whimsy goth going on right now that that's what would make it sell. And surprisingly, it did sell very quickly. I didn't pay very much for this at the bins. We listed this at $30. It sold for our full asking price, and it only took 10 days to sell. So I think we listed it at just the right time for Halloween. All right, this is the brand R13. This is a very expensive brand. The sell-through rate is not really there in this brand. It's very specific on what you have. This particular item, the Cheetah Baby cardigan, is a very specific style that does perform well. I think people completely overprice this brand R13 when they find it, but there's a very specific price point that these sell at, and I found that out by going to Poshmark. They do not sell as often on eBay, so I didn't have a lot of comps to go off of, but on Poshmark these have sold pretty consistently, and so I was able to do comps on Poshmark. That is a tip I have for you. If it's something I know is valuable and I can't get enough info off of eBay, I'll go on to Poshmark because they hold solds for like forever. So you can see a lot more data. And even though a lot of people have this price like for $200 to $300, they're only selling for like $100 to $125 pre-owned. Plus I had a smaller size, an extra small, so I had to keep that in mind also. I got this on consignment, so I wanted to do my, what would you call that, consigner justice by giving it a chance to sell at a higher price, even though I knew that the comps just weren't really this high. So in order to kind of combat both of those things, I listed at the higher end at $200, and then I did a best offer to kind of see where things fell out. I very quickly got an offer for $125, which was on the higher end of what things were going for in the actual solds on Poshmark, and I went ahead and accepted. That happened pretty quickly after a couple of months of getting listed. So this sold for $125. I will be splitting the earnings with the consigner, but in general, very, very quick sale, especially for something that does not have a great sell-through rate. And again, combating that sell-through rate by dropping the price a little bit and just considering all things. All right, next up, this is a brand you are absolutely going to want to memorize. It is Alpenrock. I have never found something in this brand that didn't sell for very quick. and for lots of money. They're more well known for their thermal shirts that are like kind of embroidered. They kind of have like a Free People look to them. However, they do make other things like t-shirts, jackets. This is very outside of the aesthetic that you would expect for Alpenrock, which is why I wanted to show it on today's video, just to make sure that you were aware of what this brand could potentially put out. So this one is a knitted jacket. As you can see, it's not heavily embroidered or multicolored like most of their stuff is. I listed it for $125. It sold for an offer to watcher of $106. And it looks like this one did take several months to sell, but we listed it back in July when it was hotter weather. This was another amazing sale. This is by the brand Gunny Sacks. Now, contrary to popular belief, there are some other labels by Gunny Sacks that are out there, but not every single one of them performs well. Really, the only Gunny Sacks that perform well are the prairie style stuff. So this is a prairie style dress. We actually failed to put prairie in the title. I'm surprised by that. That's probably why it took so long to sell. We listed this back in March and it just now sold in October. I paid $50 for this. We listed it for $250. There were a couple of issues with it, and it ended up selling for our full asking price after many months. I don't expect things that I'm pricing in the hundreds to sell very quickly. People need to take time to make decisions about those large purchases, right? So I listed this at $250. It sold for our full asking price. It did take about 7 months to sell. It's actually pretty quick for this price point. Made a lot of great money off of this, but just wanted to point out that Gunny Sacks does make things that are not in the prairie style, and those things are not worth picking up. They also have just like Jessica McClintock that you might find, and again, most of those pieces are not worth getting. It is strictly the prairie style stuff. Moving on to the Poshmark sales, like I said, most of my Poshmark stuff was clearing out older items at lower price points. However, I did have some really great full price sales as well. This is another J. Crew blazer. This one was corduroy. It was pink. And this one sold for $40. This one also had a small flaw. So again, selling for that price point of about $40 to $50 usually on pre-owned stuff, you can see just how much of a following there is with J. Crew blazers when they're selling for $40 even with small flaws. So keep your eye out for J. Crew women's blazers, and definitely keep your eye out for J. Crew men's blazers as well. They're a lot harder to find, but the women's ones I come across pretty often. This is a men's kind of factor stacking piece. This is vintage Orvis. There are a lot of vintage Orvis things that can perform well. This one had a very like hunting style look to it. It had elbow patches, which increased the value, and it ended up selling on an offer to watcher for $40. I've talked about picking up pretty much any cashmere piece I find, and I can usually sell it for at least $25. This one's called the Cashmere Project. Just wanted to point out how bad these photos are. I know a lot of you guys tell me you struggle with the black items and it gets kind of hazy. We do experience that from time to time also. So this was one that we just couldn't get correct. What we like to do is like press the top of the hanger to focus it, maybe press over here, maybe press on the item to see if it changes the focus. We definitely should have gone back and edited these photos, but we didn't. It still sold for $27. Again, I'm picking up pretty much anything 100% cashmere without holes and expecting that it's going to sell for at least $25. This one actually had some factors that in my opinion decrease value because it's a sleeveless sweater. That's not something a lot of people are looking for, and it still sold for that $25 or higher price point. Next up, this is a brand by Anthropologie that has been surprising me at how quickly it is selling. It is a brand I'm pretty sure I've passed on before because I didn't realize it was sold at Anthropologie. It is Mink Pink. So if you guys come across Mink Pink, definitely take a look at the style that you have. I don't think everything sells, but a lot of stuff does. This one is a really nice jacket. They tend to have really nice prints as well. Size extra small blazer, listed it for $75. It was new with tags. You can see the Anthropologie tag here also. Retailed for $300. Yeah, this brand goes for a lot. But we accepted an offer of $75 for this jacket. Here's another pair of shorts that is still performing well. Similarly to Lululemon, there aren't a lot of brands in shorts in general that are going to perform well still in fall and winter, but there are still some brands holding on to the sell-through rate. This is the brand Bird Dogs. If you guys find Bird Dogs, they still have a really great sell-through rate right now. I will be keeping an eye on this brand as well as Lululemon to make sure that doesn't change, but in general, Bird Dogs, still great sell-through rate. These ones had pilling on them, so we priced lower and they sold very quickly at an offer of $25. All right, next up, I have a couple bread and butter pieces for you. These padding sales is what I call them, because they pad my sales, are things that really keep, the bills paid. So I like picking them up. I come across them pretty often, and I've just kind of figured out in my area what my bread and butter, but good sell-through rate items are. So for me, that's a lot of plus size pieces. Susan Graver's one I like getting in plus sizes. This is a Susan Graver 1X snake front, kind of like a kimono top. It sold for $20. Here's another brand I like getting. It is Rose and Olive. This brand performs extremely well for me in plus sizes. This is a size 1X. The size 1X does not perform incredibly well for me. Really 2X and up is where I try to stay, but if there are some more substantial pieces or factor combos, in this case, this one is the print, I will consider getting it. This one sold for an offer of $21. Here's another plus size top. This is, again, all three of these were size 1Xs, which is why I think they sold at a lower price point. This is a made in Italy linen piece with a nice print to it. It sold for $20. Next up, this is a definite bolo. This is Vori, and Vori still going really strong. Incredible sell-through rate in this brand, and most things are going to sell for quite a bit of money for you. I come across Vori usually once when I'm at the bins. People just don't know to look for this little tag. They're like Lululemon, where the tag is missing on the inside, so you got to look for like a little logo somewhere. And in this case, you can see the logos right here on the pants. Even without the size tag and the brand label, it's sold on an offer to Watcher for $44. Here is a newer brand to me. They make a lot of really nice knitwear, but they make other things as well. I think it's pronounced Elaine, spelled, for those of you just listening, LA space LIGNE. And they make, from what I can tell, what they're known for are their knitwear. This is a really nice wool cashmere sweater, and it sold for $64. And lastly is another Anthropologie piece. This is by the brand Hutch. Hutch makes some really beautiful things, and depending on what you have, can sell quickly and can sell for quite a bit. This one sold and had an increased sell-through rate and price because it was like a velvet burnout, which is extremely trendy right now. So this was a velvet burnout jumpsuit. It was strapless, which in my opinion decreases the value. However, that velvet burnout is so trendy right now. I think that's what really pulled it through. Listed this, I think, for probably close to $100, and we ended up accepting an offer of $75. All right, guys, so that's it for what sold last week. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching. If you want to keep up with what I am doing, if you want to see the sales that are happening on both of those platforms every single week, I do make what sold videos and post them every single week. If you're not already, consider subscribing down below, and make sure you hit the notification bell, and then make sure to hit all, and you'll be notified every single time that I post a video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!